What's going on, everybody? It's Andy Mattis here, and yeah, luckily today I'm joined by Tyga Rush, multiple six-figure earner in multiple different businesses. Previously worked for Traffic and Funnels, so just basically wanted to get him on there and basically pick his brains. So yeah, also a former U.S. Marine, was it?
Yes, sir.
Yep. All right. So Tyga, why don't you just like introduce yourself, just let people know a little bit about yourself, and we'll kick it off from there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you pretty much summed it up. I'm a entrepreneur. I've started a few businesses in different niches, the affiliate marketing niche. I've been in the coaching space. I've also dabbled around in e-commerce and some brick and mortar in my past as well. Yeah, I'm a former Marine. Hoorah! Any devil dogs watching this? Um, and yeah, I got a son on the way after 7 girls, or 6 biological and one that just calls me dad. I raised her as my own. But yeah,
Busy guy
it's
then.
me in a nutshell, I guess. Grandpa, also grandpa of one.
Congratulations. So yeah, like obviously you, well, at least since I know you, you sort of you started off in the affiliate marketing, not the average person to kind of just start a business with the kind of results that you got coming out of the gate with that stuff. So why don't you kind of like tell us a little bit about how you got your start in affiliate marketing?
Oh man, I it's a weird it's a weird kind of backstory, man. I don't know how far back you really want me to go. Um, but I went on this kind of like spiritual journey. This like, oh snap, let me bring out the popcorn. This dude, like, what are you talking about here? But I ended up on this spiritual journey where I gave away everything I owned. That's what started me down this different direction, because I was originally going to the University of South Carolina and I was studying mathematics and physics. And oh, like you're about to say something. And I ended up having this vision, gave away everything I owned, and started traveling around the world. Ended up in the Philippines, and I got here, and kind of like everything just stopped, and I kind of lost my like, what am I doing here? What's my life about? And I was getting really like, I guess, like stressed out and bewildered. I had like lost connection with everyone that I really loved and cared about. Obviously, I gave away everything I owned. Um, and I was just kind of like stressed out, and I was just like cussing God out, if you will. And it was like, let me know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I ended up running across this guy's video that he was helping a lot of people. He was like, helping people quit their job and find their purpose and like making money. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the thing I got to do. So I like hit him up and I was like begging him to be my mentor and teach me and everything. And what so happened is he was in affiliate marketing. That's the thing that he was doing. That's how I originally got into it. Is he pulled me in that direction. Turned out to be a person that took advantage of me, kind of scammed me a bunch of different ways.
So I just want to quickly kind of like butt in there.
Were
You
you
kind of
asking
mentioned
me?
something interesting. That like obviously your coach turned out not to be honest. And there's obviously like a lot of people that kind of get burnt and stuff. So from my like point of view, for something that I've learned, obviously, I've made a few bad investments over the years. I've lost a bit of money in the process. But now kind of looking back, I'm actually really glad that I kind of invested in those programs, because that's what's basically sort of set me onto the right path to get to the right mentor. The first person I invested with was awful. But then, it sent me on the right path to, jump into a better program, which is kind of where we met. It's been quite painful. I've invested, 5K into a program that basically turned out to be not what I kind of like needed. But I'm really glad I kind of went through that process. That's just my thought process on it now that I've kind of been through it. What's your kind of take on it?
No, I feel like that you can't. What Steve Jobs said, you can't connect the dots. Looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. So I was at the time, I don't even know how to put a word on it, like hurtful. It left me a bit kind of like with a bitter taste in my mouth about affiliate marketing in general. The whole niche was just like the devil now or whatever. I had to get out of it. But looking back, it sent me in another direction. I ended up connecting with Traffic and Funnels, joining their team, and it took me in a place where all along I noticed that even the bad experiences, I learned things I didn't want to do, a way I didn't want to be, and I still picked up certain skills that I carried along with me.
It's very interesting that you actually say that as well, because I just think back to one of the first programs that.
Say,
Sorry, you froze. Yeah, it's kind of interesting you say that, because I kind of like just thought back to for one of the first programs that I joined, and it was quite gimmicky. They were teaching some pretty sleazy kind of tactics and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's, now you say it, that's something that I took away. I was like, right, I never want to run my business that way. So again, it's like you got to learn to kind of take the positive from it, but like from somebody that's kind of been through that and kind of continued, because going through something like that can be a massive blow to somebody, especially if they're working a job, they're struggling. This coach promises the world, they invest, a couple grand that they probably had to, go out of their way to find. So like, how did you go through that experience and then come out the other end wanting to continue?
That's a really good question. I think ultimately, whenever it happened, I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew what my dreams were, and I didn't want to give that situation the power to decide whether or not I was going to be successful and make an impact, and and the people I care about. So I was like, where do I go from here? How can I pick up the pieces and make this worth it? I don't want to go through pain and stuff and there's no reward. So the only way I knew how to get the reward out of it is to go, how can I use this? How can I redirect this in a positive way? And it's like, I believe in kind of synchronicities. So like, I ended up moving forward. I ended up investing again, as scary as that was. And I invested even more money at that time. So I went into a program that was $9,800. So that, at the time, that was the most I had ever spent on a program, and that was like a huge deal. It was like, man, I could have bought a used car for that. Like, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just dropped that. But it completely changed my life. I feel like if you want to ask people to invest in themselves through you for your help, then you have to walk that journey so that you can sit in that seat when you'll know how that person feels on the other end when they're making that decision.
100%, 100%. It's kind of like that sort of mirror reflection of like, the energy that you put out will kind of like come back to you. It's sort of like, you can't cheat the mirror. You know what I mean? If you walk around just being, a complete asshole to people, it's going to come back on you. You know what I mean? If you go out giving out good energy, that should come back on you. And it's like, there's one like fundamental truth as well. It's not just the fact of you investing. It's like your mind is different with you dropping, like, let's say 5K on a program, 5K of your hard-earned cash versus me just giving it to you. Okay, if you've been given this Lamborghini from when you were like 8 years old, okay, you're probably not going to value it that much because it's just been something that you've always had. Now, if you've had to go bust your ass and work for like 10 years to save up enough money to go and buy this Lamborghini, you're going to value it a lot more. You're probably going to clean it a lot more. You're probably going to, you're going to look after it, you're going to maintain it. So it's like your decision-making process changes from investing an amount that you haven't done before.
Yeah, no doubt. 100%.
Yeah, on just whilst we're on the kind of topics, for somebody that is like sort of, they know that mentorship is something that's right for them, they're kind of struggling to find a way to kind of, find it. Like, what advice would you kind of give to them?
So I know that feeling, especially like when it could be even the money that you're spending, the money that you don't even have. Sometimes, you're putting things on like credit cards and borrowed a little bit and piecing it all together. And there's no guarantees, obviously, in entrepreneurship. So there's an element of risk, but that's what makes, I guess, entrepreneurs. That's why we don't live paycheck to paycheck and, under a boss, is because we're willing to shoulder calculated risk. Like, is the reward worth the potential risk? And once we do that calculation, then, we're kind of looking at it. Will it shorten my time span? Will it, my time span to accomplishing whatever goal outcome I want? Will it, give me the type of skills that I can leverage again?
Obviously, you said like you calculate kind of like the risk versus the reward, but then there's also like another element to it. It's also like, for example, I'll just give you an example here. Sometimes people come to calls, they're like, I'm really struggling. I need finances for, X amount of debt, this, that, and the other. And then kind of go into like the cost of inaction, the cost of not actually doing anything about, the situation that kind of brought you to this call in the first place. And this is something that I found quite a common trait of what, drives entrepreneurs to actually go and invest in, 10K programs, because most people see that as like an expense. You know, and for a lot of people it is, but then a lot of entrepreneurs also look at the cost of staying exactly where they are. And just the thought of them staying exactly where they are and being in the same position that they are now in, like, say, a year's time, 2 years' time, is much more painful than, you know, taking a slight hit of, you know, investing 10K and then finding that you've actually, you know, 10x your investment over the space of a year. You know what I mean?
Whatever that saying is, scared money don't make money. I get it though. I get that feeling because I feel it even to this day. Like when I invest in like a new program, mentorship, or something like that, it's our brain's natural instinct for survival. It is always trying to like weigh these things like, is this going to take away status from me? Is this going to, you know, whatever? But it's being able to control that and look at it and go, yeah, how you were saying, what would be the alternative? What if I just continued to do things like I've already done them? You know, in the movie The Matrix, whenever Neo's in the back of that car and he's like, let me out of here, let me out. He's freaking out. And then they open the door and there's this one road and it's like a rainy road and it's dark. And he just stops and stares at it for a second. And like, go ahead, Neo. It's like, there's the road, but you know where that road ends. You know where this goes. It's like, you can go there and go right back to your life. You know what that's like. Or you can stay here with us and we can see how deep this really goes. And I think that is that moment I always have right before I make a decision, right before I invest in actually, you know, getting help. It's like, I look and my brain wants to run and the door goes, there's that road, but you know where that goes. You're going to go, maybe you struggle for like 6 months, maybe life pops up, you know, whatever.
So it's interesting you say that because, like, most people, they know that road, and 99% of people, if they're left to their own devices, they will walk that road knowing fully well where it goes, because yeah, typically things that people need to do in order to change their life is uncomfortable. So I know you're a bit of a mindset expert, so like, can you kind of explain the thought process that I guess keeps people stuck, you know, keeps people in their comfort zone?
It's our brains are not evolved to make us successful or wealthy. Our brains are evolved to keep us alive. So what we do is we end up having this conditioning where a certain feeling means we have to do a certain action. So if I feel nervous, that means I shouldn't do this. And that's many times not the case. It's like, because you're going to feel nervous. Like that is the threat. Like it's not real. You know, it's an imagined threat. So there's not like a lion on the Serengeti staring you down about to eat you, but your brain doesn't know the difference. It feels like it. When that person goes, here's the investment, it's like, roar, like, oh, there's the thing. When I feel this feeling, it always means run, because your brain does that instinct on like for a reason, because it's designed to keep you alive. It's better to just run than stand there and possibly get eaten, you know. But in this day and age, we're no longer, you know, running around in the jungle. We are like on computers and like starting businesses and stuff. But that same instinct is the same. But once you learn how to control it, once you learn how to decouple that instinct, just because you feel fear doesn't mean run away.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So it's like, yeah, you know, you broke it down just way better than I could anyways. This is why I wanted to ask you. So yeah, thanks for breaking that one down. So yeah, obviously I want to kind of like move on to like your kind of like, not necessarily your personal life, but just like personal life in like the entrepreneurial journey. So typically something that I found is like, if there's a whole bunch of stress and stuff going on in your personal life, it's going to carry over into your business, right? How do you find that your personal life impacts your business? Like, just you
A
can break it
lot.
down.
My 8-year-old daughter just had brain surgery. You know, a little over a week and a half ago. She still hasn't had the part of her skull that they removed. Still haven't put it back. Even as we speak right now, she's in the hospital. She just had a feeding tube put in, and stuff like that. And I have a lot of other different things going on all at once. So there is an element there where you want to kind of get off balance, you know, like you want to run away, but it's a part of, I think entrepreneurship is like 80% mindset, 80% inner work, and 20% technique, you know, strategies, and like, you know, what Facebook ads, you know, should I run? What keywords should I like, you know, go after, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of it's like you could take two people, give them the same exact blueprint framework, and send them on their way. And then one becomes wildly successful with the same exact information, the same exact support, the same exact everything. And the other person just crumbles and does nothing and actually might end up worse off. What's the difference? The process works. It's just what's going on in that person's inner world. Yeah,
Mm.
hopefully that answers the
Yeah.
question, or
And it's like it's interesting because obviously I'm a coach myself and I've seen this myself as well. And it is just insane to just see how differently people's perspectives change, like how just different they are in general. You know, from people that have got the exact same information and just how differently they look at things. I think this is why you say it's like 80% of it. When people came into my programs, you know, the first things that we did was basically reprogram their brain to think like a six-figure entrepreneur, because otherwise none of the tips, none of the strategies or anything like that would work. And you know, kind of goes to show, I've had, you know, a couple of students, you know, Dave King, you know, is online for over 10 years. I think it's Srini was online for over 14 years, and both of those were struggling for over a decade. You know, they come into the program, I basically reprogrammed their mind, you know, to think the right way, and then bang, you know, within both of them, within the first couple of months, started making money. Within a few months, you know, they're making, you know, consistent money each month, and you know, they've both broken off and done their own thing. So it's just really, really interesting to just see how different people's perspectives are. But yeah, on that topic, like what would you recommend to somebody that's watching this as a way to kind of improve their mindset? Because I know it's easier said than done. Yeah, what are some things people could, what are some inexpensive ways that people could start immediately?
Okay, well, one, I mean, just off top, I would say get into a community or a mastermind of people who can hold you accountable, people who are headed in the same direction as you. That works wonders. You don't want to get stuck in your own head, out isolated, and talk yourself into a weird space. Another thing is just really what I do every day is I take time to really just write out my thoughts. And at the end of every day, so at the beginning of every day, I write out my thoughts, I write out my goals, I look at my goals, I visualize. At the end of every day, I go over and I review how, like, what did I do right today? What did I do wrong today? What can I do to improve tomorrow? I think just something that simple goes a really, really long way. And then realizing, like, it's this weird feeling that if you haven't ever gone through it, it takes a lot of while. I say this is why a lot of people end up quitting or failing, is because it's like you're going to face hardships in any pursuing any goal, any obstacle, you know, overcoming any obstacle. And it's just what happens is when we get hit with it, it's like, oh, something stressful is happening, and you naturally want to retreat back into the gravity of your old life, your old processes, and everything like that. Like I told you, my daughter just recently had brain surgery. I have a lot of different other things going on that I won't bring up here in our interview right now. But my brain goes, this means you should stop. Like, you got so much going on, blah, 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 blah. And then it's a reframing. So looking for ways that you can, this is the other one, is looking for ways that you can reframe those negative thoughts when they do pop up. Because I could say the reason why I'm not going to do my business is because this isn't the right time. I have so much family things going on. I have all these other issues going on. I have health issues that I had dealt with or whatever. And you can either say that's the reason why I'm going to quit, or you can say, yeah, this is the reason why I must succeed. It's the same thing, but it's just how you looked at it. One's fuel and one's, something that's a barrier.
And it's quite interesting because it's like, this is like another one of those kind of like false belief systems on, I'll do it when it's the right time. But like, since kind of obviously, shifting my mindset to think, a different way, it's like, when I actually look back through my life, even when things are going well, it's never the right time. It's like there's always something that comes up, a family member gets sick, or some unexpected bill comes in, or you get ill, or like there is literally always something. So like, it's important to kind of like shift that mindset. It's going to be uncomfortable, but just like some action is better than no action. You know what I mean? Just get yourself moving in the direction you want to go. It's not going to be easy. Even if you're only doing a little bit, even if you're only moving at a small like a slow pace. You always are saying that you always come out with a tortoise in the hair or some.
Yeah, it's the little fable that we're taught ever since we're little kids, in nursery or elementary, and it's the race where the tortoise and the hare super fast, and at the beginning of the race just takes off 100% full power blazing, and the tortoise just goes right along consistently, taking his little steps. And then eventually the hare gets tired, exhausted, has been running so long. It's like, I'm so far ahead, I'm just going to chill under this tree for a little bit, take a nap. Tortoise is way behind. And then what happens? He oversleeps, the tortoise passes by, and he wins the race. So it's the same thing like with life and business. It's just
It makes perfect
taking those
sense as
steps.
well. Because I was you came out of affiliate marketing, you made like 10K in like your first 30 days, right? So you were like the hare. I was like the tortoise. I came out, it took me 8 months to make my first sale. Now, one thing I can tell you about me going through that 8 months, I didn't know your 30 days. I'm not, I'm not, that wasn't something that I experienced, but like for me going through that 8 months of struggle, I was just doing everything wrong. You know what I mean? I was trying this, it wasn't working. I was trying this, it wasn't working. I was trying this, it wasn't working. But when I actually got things structured, when I actually started working, it was amazing. I was so happy that I actually went through those experiences, because then when my students came through and they were asking me questions, I was like, boom, I know how to overcome this because I've done it. You know what I mean? Boom, I know how to overcome this thing because I've done it. And it's just interesting because sometimes you may not see this if you're on like this entrepreneurial journey. So I'm going to say this now, like if there's something that you're experiencing, you know, we all go through hardship, we all go through times where we just want to quit, but often there's a reason that you're going through it. You may not see it until you come out the other end. But for me, I had to go through those experiences to get the knowledge of all the different pieces that I need. You know what I mean? You came out the gate, made 10K in the first 30 days. You were already doing a lot of things the right way. You again, to say it's difference in perspective. Your perspective must be completely different to mine starting out. You know what I mean? And that's something that's obviously made my journey a little bit slower than yours coming out the gate. But one thing that I've learned now is taking me probably, I say, the best part of 3 years to develop this mindset. Is like, it does not matter how long it takes. You know what I mean? Set yourself a goal, and try not to say, okay, I'm going to have this in the next 30 days, because that is a lag indicator. It's a self-sabotaging kind of like behavior pattern where, you know, you set yourself these goals, you don't hit them, and then you're like, oh, I didn't do it. And then you start beating yourself up over it. And it's like a self-sabotage pattern because you're setting yourself unrealistic goals. So I'm now learning to set myself a target, and I'll get there when it comes. I just trust in my ability to learn and, you know, be able to develop the right skills I need to achieve it. You know what I mean? It will come in its own time, not when I always want it to, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, man.
What's your kind of like take on, how do you think on, how do you, what's your kind of mindset on setting goals? Do you set yourself like specific timelines or?
Yeah, so I take an approach of essentially like the be do have. So I always start at the identity level. So instead of just focusing on like, oh, here's all the things I want, I go, who do I want to be? You
Interesting.
know, and how does that person show up? And then once I've decided that that's who I want to be, now what does that person do? And like, so then the actions come out of identity. Like if I'm a millionaire, let's say that was the identity I put myself out as. Okay, well, what does a millionaire do? Then you start listing out the behaviors and habits. And then, okay, well, what things do they have? And outfolds from the behavior, the things. So then now, if you focus on the identity primarily, becoming the person with those principles, those character traits, and then that's your main focus, then the other things unfold naturally because you will start doing the things because it's who you are. You don't have to like all kind of crazy self discipline because you don't have to have self discipline. I'm who I am. So you can do the same thing because our personalities, our identities are malleable, they're flexible, they're not real. Like the person, I don't want to get too philosophical and crazy, but I'm like the person that you call Andy, the person I call Tyga, they're created. They're created already. You know, like society and feedback from our environment has created this character. But that character and the things you have and the goals you achieve is just coming out of that identity. And at any point, you can decide who you really want to be, you know, and change the narrative around it.
It's interesting you say that, because you say society has created this character. So that takes me on to the topic of like what I see is society has created false characters that don't even exist. You know, certain belief systems about, you know, certain groups of people. So I just want to like, you know, just hit this like now while we're kind of recording. So you've been in you've been in some of the same programs with me. We're talking some like nearly 17,000 entrepreneurs from all over the world. And one false common belief system that I see in society is that, like, you know, they see rich people, okay, you know, he's come from a well-off family, you know, he's been, you know, given this. But since I've joined like, you know, entrepreneurial space, that's something that I've very, very rarely seen. Typically, I've seen people that have, you know, come from a wealthy family or come from a really good job. Typically, not always, but typically the ones that don't do too well because they're comfortable. Is the ones that really need the change. The ones that come from rock bottom, you know, people that have come out of prison, you know, being given life sentences, like yourself, ending up on giving all your stuff away, ending up on the other side of the world with nothing. I've kind of gone through that a similar sort of journey myself, you know what I mean? You know, being involved with, you know, crime and drugs and all of that kind of stuff to sort of, you know, turning my life around. So this is typically what I see is like people that are doing well have come from the pain, you know, the real pain that, you know, a lot of people kind of experience. So yeah, do you want to kind of like explain like your take on it and what you've actually seen since you've come into the entrepreneurial journey versus I don't even know what your belief system was before you became an entrepreneur. So I want to see the differences from your view, if that's right.
Yeah. So there's this weird story. There was this like old guy, you know, maybe he's like 70 years old, and all he did was sit on his front porch on a rocking chair, and beside him was this equally old dog, and this old hound dog, and you know, a guy was passing by. Every day he passes by, the dog would just was just howling and howling, sounded like he was horribly in pain, and this would happen all the time. And one day, the guy just walked up to the old man, and was like, is your dog okay? Like, I don't mean to be forward or weird or anything like that, but it just seems like your dog's in pain. I know he's old, like maybe you should go to the vet. And he was like, oh, that's Buster. Buster's all right. He's just laying on a nail. And that's why he's hollering like that. And it's like, he's laying on a nail. Well, why wouldn't he just get up? He's like, well, it doesn't hurt him enough. That's why he's just laying there. If it hurts him enough, he'll get up and move. So I ain't worrying about it. He ain't worrying about it. And that is the same thing that's happening in the case you're talking about. It's like they are experiencing the same type of feeling like, oh, I should do this towards my life. Like they see the days are going by, the wrinkles are showing up in the corner of their eyes, you know, like life doesn't reverse. You don't know how much time you have left. And they feel that prick, that nail in their side, but it's not painful enough. And it's not that it's not actually painful enough. They're just telling themselves that. If they were stopping looking like, what is this costing me with this nail stuck in my side? Like, who could I be? Whose lives I could be impacting? Like, how is this setting back, you know, my children, my grandchildren, my, you know, whatever. And you start seeing like, you know, those things, and you start to realize how painful it really is, you know, and you actually get up off the nail, hopefully.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, it's nice. I like that analogy you used to kind of break it down. It's got me sort of thinking like it's very true. I like I just want to kind of move on to like another thing that I kind of see moving on from that is like false beliefs about money, right? So I'm a car guy. I own a Nissan Skyline. I used to go to like car meets and stuff, and there'd always be people in like, you know, quote normal cars. Okay, so you know, it's cars that, you know, the average people own, but then there'll always be this one person that just rocks up in a Lambo, and everyone's always like, oh man, that guy's got too much money, you know, or you know, he's obviously doing all right, you know. It's like negative beliefs about money. So what I've seen is I've seen entrepreneurs obviously have these beliefs. People have these beliefs. They've overcame some of these certain beliefs in order to then for them to start a business. But then when it goes to actually charging for their services, they feel like it's slimy. They feel like it's wrong. So then they start undercutting themselves, start undercharging, and then it's a constant rat race for the next customer because they've undercharged and they're not covering all of their expenses and this, that, and the other. And it's like a self-sabotaging like pattern. And I see all of these things literally just stem from just false belief systems in society. But then it's easier said than done to sort of change them, right? So the first thing is sort of understanding them. But like, yeah, have you kind of like seen this stuff as well, or?
Yeah, I've seen it a lot, like more than like 90% of people. It's weird because I mean I've gone through it too. I grew up in not well-to-do background and family. I think a lot of times it's because of not really understanding what money is and ending up attaching emotions to money when it shouldn't be connected in that way. So like money is just an idea. It's not real, right? It's like you can imagine if you and I were just having a conversation, and I was like, "Hey, Andy, I heard that you had a problem with your car, and you had a flat tire. I actually fix tires, and I can go over and get that done." You're like, "Okay, well, tell me about what you would do." And all we did was we sat down and we made an agreement about your tire, what would be involved, and like how much it's costing. Like what would it be worth to you for me to fix that tire, right? And then we sat down. Let's say we wrote a little contract that said, "Here's the value," and I just gave you that piece of paper, or you gave me that piece of paper. That is essentially what money is. Money is just a very fast and easy way that we can agree on the value of goods and services, like things. So if you and I agree, like if you and I agree on the value of whatever it is, like that is the representation. The money is just a representation of that agreement, that contract, and it's malleable. Like that same tire, if your car's just sitting in the front yard and you got another car that you take to work, you do everything else, that the value of fixing that tire isn't the same as if you and your girlfriend, your baby, and your kids are out on a vacation out of town, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and you have a blowout, and you don't have a spare, and you walk to the next, the nearest like mechanic or repair shop, and your kids are still sitting there beside the road, and you're like, "I need this fixed," and I'd be like, "Well, this is what is it worth to you now? I could charge you a lot more, not because the tire, nothing else has changed, just what we agree this is worth to you." You get what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it makes perfect sense. So like, how would you like? I get that, but like, what would you say to somebody that just has that feeling? They go onto these sales calls, they make clear, like, my product's 5K. This is what my coach told me that it's worth. Rah rah rah. I know it's worth this, and then they get to the end of the call, and then for some reason they just get that feeling. Oh, I'm going to charge 2K, or I'm going to charge 1,500. They start undercutting themselves. What would you say to people? Because I know there's just so many coaches out there who, especially when they're starting out, this is something that I experienced myself as well. So I obviously, this is something I had to overcome. So how would you help somebody overcome that?
What I see a lot of people when they do that is they think they're doing that person a favor by charging them less. You get what I mean? So it's like they're thinking, "Oh, well, this is worth 5K, but if I only charge you 2K, I just really did you a favor." But in many times, you actually screw them over, because remember I said money's not real. It's built up value in your mind. So in your mind, if you feel like this opportunity is worth $5,000, $10,000, or whatever that big number is for you, you're going to show up in a $10,000 way when you spend that $10,000, because you're like, "This is what it's worth. This is what's going on here." And if I cheat you out of the opportunity to show up on that level, and I give you the opportunity to play smaller and show up at a $2,000 level, I've just cut your chances. Actually, I've hurt your opportunity for growth, for success. Is because now you get to shrink back a bit.
So something interesting you said there is like, money is just built up value in your mind. So I'm actually going to say something right now to just solidify this belief. So if there's somebody that's watching this, what would you say to you right now if I just said, okay, if you're struggling, go and invest £1,000 into this online business. Would you do it? Right? If the answer is yes, then great, that's going to do some good things. But for most people that I've asked, the answer is no. Now, the reason for that is because obviously this doesn't seem like something that's like really valuable to you. But I can guarantee a lot of the people that are watching this will actually be watching this from an iPhone. Okay, so how much does that iPhone cost? Typically over here in the UK, they're over £1,000 already. But for me, that iPhone's only really, for me personally, and my mindset, that iPhone's only really valuable to me if I know how to use that iPhone in a way that's going to make me more money in return. Okay, that's actually one of the reasons I even bought my actual smartphone I have right now, is to start making YouTube shorts and stuff like that. So, has that monetary value. But, this is like how broken the mindset is in most people in society today. It's like, okay, I wouldn't spend £1,000 on a business because it's not worth anything to me. Oh, he's got too much money, or is the government this, that, and the other. But then the thing that's actually going to, help you improve your situation by investing £1,000 into a business, you can be making 10K a month by the end of the year, right? But then most people think that, going buying that phone, which adds absolutely no value to majority of people's lives, is worth it. So it's about, priorities in life. And typically the things that people need to prioritize are uncomfortable, and they'd much rather go and spend it on the thing that gives them instant gratification. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the experiment? It's they had this experiment where they put kids in this room, and they call it the marshmallow test. So they put a single marshmallow on a paper plate in a room, and they told the kid these instructions. They're like, all right, so I'm putting this here. I'm going to go away, for a little while. They didn't tell them how long they're be gone, but they're like, if you don't eat this marshmallow, and when I come back and I see that you didn't eat any of it, you didn't bite it or anything like that, I'm going to give you 2 marshmallows and you can eat both of them as soon as I come back. But if you eat that one, then I'm not going to give you 2. And they're like, do you understand? They're like, yes. And then they left the room, and then the experiment started. So they started observing these kids, and each one of them, like, you start to see, like, some of them would like sit there, they do like weird things to like force themselves not to eat the marshmallow, not to have that instant gratification. They had like a strategy of how they would go about it. And the other ones would just, as soon as the person walked out, they kind of like flick it a couple times, and they ate it. And what they did is they came back and they realized, okay, a small percentage of these kids actually did it, and they got the 2, the delayed gratification, and the rest of them just ate it right away. And they followed these kids throughout the decades, and they checked back in with them when they were adults. And the correlation, the results of the experiment was that the children who had waited and didn't eat the marshmallow and ate it, had the 2, was willing to resist the impulses and have 2, and it comes back. Those people were successful. They were like business owners and doing well. They were part of the, the 1%ers. And that's the same mentality now. I mean, it carries over. That's the human mentality. But it's not like something that's inborn. Like, it can be trained. It's a strategy. It's just a shifting a decision of just deciding like, hey, I am strategy to resist the marshmallow in my hand right now for the 2 marshmallows later. So I can take this $1,000 right now and do without that iPhone, not have the iPhone in my hand, so that I can take this $1,000, invest it, and duplicate it, so that I can have 2 iPhones. And like, get what I mean? The iPhone is just the representation of the value. You could have however many iPhones you want later, whenever the process is advanced. So I think that's really what's at the core of it.
Yeah. Knowing that delayed gratification versus instant, that instant gratification is always going to make you, it's going to give you that instant kick, but in the long term, it's going to hurt you. It's like, you can hold off, like, what's the return that I'm going to see later on by, focusing on this thing now. And I just, on that, is kind of want to take you on to something that's kind of one of the biggest things that I've actually learned on my journey as of what keeps people stuck. There's an old story called a thing called learned helplessness, in case nobody's heard of it, right? And a prime example is like, when you're a kid, okay, you may be ambitious, you have these dreams. Oh, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, I want to be, and nobody could like crush your dreams, okay? If you want that thing, you're like, you're really kind of just excited about it, you love telling people about it. But as time goes on, as you get older, it's like you receive a bunch of kind of blows, which kind of like knocks your confidence. And then maybe these things that seemed real when you were a kid doesn't seem like realistic when you're older. And basically they done this test. I don't remember exactly how it was done, but like, let's just say, for example, that there was 2 dogs, okay, and they're put onto this platform, which has got a divide in the middle. Now, dog 1 gets put onto the left side of the platform, And then after so long, he starts receiving these electric shocks. Okay, so now with that, the dog obviously isn't liking it, and he jumps over to the other side of the platform. And then basically, obviously when he jumps over to the other side, he's not receiving the shocks anymore, right? So they put dog 2 on. He goes on the platform, he starts receiving the shocks and does the same thing. He jumps over to the other side. Okay, and when he jumps to the other side, he continues to receive the shocks, unlike the other dog. Now they run the test again for a second time. They put dog 1 back on. Again, he starts receiving the shocks and he does the exact same thing. He jumps straight over to the other side again. They put dog 2 on, the dog that was getting shocked on both sides. And when he starts receiving the shocks from the first side, he doesn't jump back over the divide, because he learned last time that when he jumped over, that he continued to still receive the shock. So he's essentially learned helplessness. Okay. And there's another story with like an elephant, and this actually, you can actually find this stuff online because it happens in real life. I think it's somewhere in Africa, where they have a baby elephant and they chain this elephant by his leg to like a post. And when this elephant's baby, obviously he can't move. He can't just like rip free. But obviously, as the elephant grows, he's this massive, like, however many ton, beast, and he could quite easily just run and just rip that tiny little chain off. But where he's been attached to this thing his whole life, he's learned helplessness. He's learned that he can't break free from this chain, so he doesn't even try anymore. And this is what I see in society: is like people they've received so many shocks, or they tried to break free from that chain so many times, that they just accepted that their life's a reality. And I actually put something up recently as well, because obviously a lot of people, I'm not even just saying a lot of people I know are struggling like financially at the moment. And I just put the status up to just let people know, it's like, if you actually look back, all you got to do is look back in history, look back 100 years, you can see things have always got more expensive. Definitely isn't changing anytime soon. If you have a look back at like how often there is a recession, you can obviously find the dates throughout history. Like every 10 to 20 years, there's another recession. Okay, so like these events that are happening now are actually really predictable when you actually look at them. And as Einstein says, it's like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. But it's just like most people, they may be even watching this, they're probably inspired by it, but essentially, if you need to do something and you haven't done it, then you've probably learned helplessness. And then obviously it's not your fault, it's something that happens to a lot of us. But it was really intriguing thing to kind of just understand, because I definitely learned helplessness for a long period of my life, before actually, being able to make any changes and do something about it. So I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, what's your view on that specific topic of like learned helplessness?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, think about it. I mean, that's the nature of the way success works and failure. Is like anytime you set up to do anything worthwhile, you're going to get opposition. You're going to bump up against something. So it's like you get those shocks where it's like, oh, I wanted to start a business and then it failed. You wanted to do this and then, there was a recession. You wanted to ask that girl out and she rejects you, and then all these different things. And your brain tries to protect you. It goes, why waste the energy trying this? And you come up with these beliefs about it. I'm not good enough, or this doesn't work for me. I'm from the hard knock life, and like I'm not destined for all of this and that. And there's another part. The second part to that dog experiment is like they learned helplessness, but then there's a second part where they actually took those same dogs that learned helplessness and they deconditioned them, right? So what would happen is they would get the shocks and they would lay down and whine, right? And they wouldn't jump over. But what the experimenter started to do was when they started getting the shocks, they would physically take them and get them over to the other side afterwards. So they learned again that it was possible to get away, and they deconditioned. It took longer, but it worked. So then they learned again to jump over. So with the right frame, there's hope. It just means there's hope that with the right frameworks, the right support from someone who can see from outside the cage, essentially, you can get conditioned to new ways of thinking. You don't always have to be beat down by your own mind and be a prisoner of what's always happened in the past. Because you can, when those things happen, that person from the outside can go, this is how you overcome this, and put one of your paws on the other side. And you're like, oh, snap, I didn't die. Oh, snap, my business is still starting to get some progress, even though I hit this this bump in the road. And then over time, what you'll see is like enough of that support, which is why I get into a great community or mastermind, and having someone who can actually pick those paws up when the shocks happen and show you exactly what to do, like that will decondition you to where now you can jump over those hurdles that life throw at you on your own. You will no longer need the experimenter. At some point you will grow to the next level. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it, or how I see it.
Amazing. And yeah, obviously like we're running a bit, running a bit over at the minute. So yeah, just before we kind of like wrap things up, I just want to kind of go into something a little bit different. Basically like signs in their lifestyle that people can spot that and maybe kind of destined to become an entrepreneur, right? It's quite funny. I've been in entrepreneurship for nearly 3 years, and it's probably about 2 months ago I've actually noticed a pattern in my own life. It's tracked right back to childhood, which was basically carried me to where I am right now. Okay, and like you said, you receive these shocks, you receive all these like kind of blows, and for me personally, I'd always tried to sell stuff. Okay, my brother got a load of these Jack Daniels t-shirts, and I thought I had this mad idea. Yeah, I'm gonna go out and sell these t-shirts. Went and tried to sell them, failed. You know what I mean? I used to just buy things, get these ideas. Oh, I'll try to sell that. Didn't work. Okay, there was one thing that did actually work, but it's kind of like the whole entrepreneurial journey. You find that most entrepreneurs, they have all of these kind of like different ideas, and you know it may not work this time, may not work this time, may not work this time. But like out of all of those attempts, I think J.K. Rowling, she tried getting the Harry Potter book published like over 10 times before it actually went through. Okay, so there's all of these kind of like misses